Just as a reminder, you can visit us at thepandapod.com. That's thepandapod.com to grab our RSS feed, listen directly, and share PandaPod with your family and friends. You can also reach us directly via email through podcast@thepandapod.com. Thanks for listening.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Panda Pod. I am Jeff, and I'm here with my co-host Wiggy and Rab.
Hello.
Hey.
And we also have our guest today, Tim.
Hello.
Hey there, Tim. Tim's an old friend of ours, and he's recently gotten into streaming on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really impressed with how quickly your viewership has popped up.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know that I've seen many people get a sub badge as quickly as you've gotten one.
Yeah, it's been really encouraging, man. It's felt very natural.
Right on. What made you want to become a streamer? Prior to that, what were you doing?
So that's an interesting subject, and it goes a little bit further back to that. So for me, as I'm sure many people can relate to, many people who are neurodivergent, it's difficult sometimes feeling a sense of agency. And how common is the story of being in a job that might be promising, might be stable, but leaves you feeling no massive amount of fulfillment. And in terms of streaming, that was an element of fulfillment that I was seeking, but also it was an element of feeling just agency and control in my life. So I had a job, career going great, no problem at all. But overall, a drive to do something that supported other people, coming from a person who faced a lot of mental challenges in life and physical challenges, wanting to go back to the areas that I was in when I struggled and the kind of headspace I was in when I struggled, and find a place to support or find a way to support people, the kind of people that I was when I was younger and when life was very difficult. And that's what streaming was for me. And it was the goal of making a community, no matter how small, no matter how minuscule, even if it's just one person, where I can have a space where they can take refuge and where they can get some entertainment and relief, if they're not being given the opportunity for that anywhere else in their life. And that's basically about the size of it.
Right on. And so that's something you found in Twitch streaming, like watching streams previously?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really interesting subject because I've talked about this with a lot of people, and the phrase that really stuck with me is, you guys all, I'm sure, watch varying degrees of Twitch yourselves?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah. So Twitch tends to gather people together or attract people naturally who, how do I say it, have been disenfranchised from life in a way. You get people who use it for entertainment, but a lot of people will get drawn into communities because it can be one of the primary means of socializing that they have in their life. And that can be for someone who's neurodivergent, someone who's depressed, or people who are physically disabled, who aren't able to get socialization and community in real life. And it's a really good means of that. And, you can talk about the parasocial aspect of Twitch, and there are downsides to the setup, but the better sides of it is that it gives people a huge amount of community in a way that they can access on their terms, and often in a way that they can't get anywhere else,
I'm actually really super excited to hear you say this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's super interesting. And just going back to right in the beginning when you were talking about, it was really hard to find that thing that kind of gave you purpose and kind of gave you fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
And that's what this is for me. The same thing was happening to me. Like, I have a fantastic career.
Yep.
I don't worry about anything, but there's something missing, right? And it's not something that's like my like I have a wife, I have a kid. Everything else is great. But just there had to be something that was just, you know, deep and meaningful.
Yeah.
And so to hear you say that, and that's why you found what you found is really it's inspiring for me. You know, and that you were able to create a space for people where they're able to just find camaraderie, you know.
I mean, it comes back as well to that feeling of agency, because what we're talking about when we have something like that set up, like life's going great. Like I've got a wonderful job, like in marketing, it's really promising, it's really stable, but the idea of having agency over something is the feeling that you have the power and the ability within yourself to direct the course of your life. And when you feel like you don't have agency, it doesn't matter if you've got a good job. You get that hollow feeling of things not being right and you not being in the right place in like a really low resolution way, which is kind of like this really nasty thing. It's like this ambivalent kind of like low resolution background feeling that you aren't quite doing the thing you should be, and that you don't have the ability to steer the course of your life, to direct your life. Um,
100%.
Yeah,
and that's a
definitely.
really hard thing to deal with. And then for me, the idea of I want to do something bigger than myself and also have community or create community is a really cool thing. But like, how the hell do you start that? And I was thinking, I feel on some level I'll probably end up doing something different from this down the line, but something bigger or something that doesn't involve the platform or something completely different in the name of wanting to find out what I do in life that's fulfilling in helping other people. But if you don't have a sense of that agency, it seemed like a really good idea for me to go back to something that was manageable and tied to the things that gave me all that relief when I was younger. So like doing this has been something that I've been able to fit into my life, fit into my career, and it's on a kind of like smaller, kind of humble scale. But the cool thing that's happening is that when you do something like that, when it's tied to something that was really meaningful, like your childhood or things you struggled with there for me, and it's something I can do remotely, it's tied to entertainment, all of that stuff, you can start to build up that sense of agency. And I'm sure you guys have that, like, oh yeah, we're making a podcast, I can do this. And then maybe it leads in time for you to do other things and bigger things, and it puts you on a path of being able to have that sense of confidence and agency in your life. So it may be that down the line, Twitch isn't the thing I stick with, but it's been the thing that has started to take me from that low resolution feeling of this kind of sucks, but the thing that I want to do is really big and hazy, to actually having a sense of like movement and ownership over your life.
Yeah, I have to say that's really powerful, and you're very good at um, coming up with an eloquent way to, narrate your inner thoughts, I guess, and like cover some deep thoughts. I was curious, like, is that a part of your persona? I mean, I don't want to say persona, but like the way that you speak to your audience on the channel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know what to put it to. I've had that feedback from people like already. I think it's just really deeply tied to what my interests are. I don't really know what to say in response to that, to be honest. But part of the thing I wanted to do in the small community I have, it's like tiny, but it's been so beautiful seeing it like pop up. When you go to having like regulars, you have a server, you see people talking to each other instead of just to you. You have that come through. But we've already had, the people on my uh, community, which I'm proud to call it, having some pretty deep chats, talking back and forth. Just today, I was on a small stream I was doing. had some really intimate discussions, and yeah, it seems to sort of drift in that direction. But I guess I don't really know how to specifically answer what you were saying.
Sure. I mean, I think that is a good enough job.
Yeah, right on.
I think that from the moment I met you, and most people won't know this who are listening, but Tim lived with me for like 6-ish months. Is that right, Tim?
It was 3 months exactly, because I didn't want
3
to have
months.
to apply during the Trump era to get a visa.
That's right. That's right.
That nerve-wracking O'Hare airport arrival where they stuck me in the secondary screening room.
Mhm. Well, one thing I've known from you from the moment we started talking is that you're a like instantly vulnerable individual with people. Like I at least for me, I never got a sense that you were shying away from telling me what you wanted to tell me, and you're really
Yeah.
good at finding ways to say things that need to be said in well, I mean, eloquent ways is a great way to put it. Like you find difficult things, difficult topics, and great ways to explain them to people. And I know from watching your stream, the times that I have, that I see you opening up to people in that same way. And you also have a very like easy way of communication with you. Like it's so easy to hold a conversation with you, and that's a great skill to have. And something I've really appreciated about you. I can definitely see why that would be like a big drawing in your community. You know, when you're open and vulnerable with people and are willing to, you know, share and be real, you attract those same kinds of people. And I'm not shocked to hear that's happening in your community. I think it's going to be a really tight-knit family once it gets going there.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, because there's a bit of a wrinkle and a challenge to that sometimes. And it's awesome to do Twitch and to want to create that space in that community. But one of the really big lessons on a broader scale I had recently was finally clicking on the difference between openness and vulnerability. Because I am a really intellectual dude, and it's not a brag. That means a really specific thing to me nowadays. For people who are interested in psychology, people who have had traumatic childhood experiences and difficult early lives can often come across as really intelligent, intellectual. And what a lot of people don't realize is that intellectualization can actually be a traumatic response. It can be something that you can develop into and get really into philosophy, really into figuring things out. And part of the thing that I wanted to do in Twitch, helping people, was helping the kind of person I was when I was younger, which was super into philosophy, super into this and that, super into the idea of fixing myself. And it took until recently to realize that there's a big difference between openness and vulnerability. And it can be a bit misleading sometimes, because if you lay everything out on the line at first, what you can find yourself doing is being open when you think you're being vulnerable. And being open is leading with and being really easy talking about the shit you've already processed. Being vulnerable is showing all of the raw stuff behind it.
Right.
And for somebody who's had a very difficult life, you spent loads of time intellectualizing stuff instead of feeling issues. And it can make you in a place where you can really easily lead with loads of stuff. You've thought it out to the nth degree, and it can look kind of impressive, and it can be quite compelling. And people are like, oh shit, this person's being really vulnerable. But in actual fact, that person spent untold hours and days intellectualizing some challenges to the point where they can quite comfortably talk about really deep stuff. And it can seem like vulnerability when in fact it's openness. So as much as like I do talk about things pretty well, that difference is a really profound one. And it also sort of touches on what's really appropriate for a stream, right? Because you can lead and set the tone for a community, and people will pick up on that. But sometimes you want to try and draw the line between, is it right to be vulnerable? You know, is it right to share too much? You're the person who's steering a conversation. Like, do you really want to guide something down a certain level? So it's a whole interesting subject. And I appreciate the compliment. And I think, generally speaking, you know, I'm not too hard on myself, but it's a very interesting wrinkle between those two things. and particularly on Twitch, where you're trying to toe the line between what is appropriate and healthy instead of letting it all out. The difference between those two things is a really important one.
I think I might need you to be my therapist.
My therapist said I should be a therapist.
Yeah, I think you called me out a lot there personally.
I did that all the time, dude. And when I realized the difference between those two things, I was like, oh shit, I've been doing that.
The only thing that didn't stick was the whole they wind up being intelligent.
Yeah.
Other than that, you got me nailed.
Can't all be perfect, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So question about your stream, right?
Yeah.
So how much time are you spending now? How much time did you spend when you started? And how much time do you think extra time you're going to be putting into it?
Well, see that's actually a super interesting thing for me, because it was just on my mind, because I talked about the idea at the start when we started talking about being stuck and not having agency and shit. Do you guys use potty language?
Oh yeah,
Chris, as much as you want.
Yeah.
This is a very explicit podcast.
Yeah, so no agency, stuck, can't steer the ship, all that kind of stuff. And then lo and behold, something comes into your life which you feel empowered through and is working really well. And so my therapist used to be a Buddhist monk, and I do a lot of spiritual stuff, kind of drawn in that way, and I use that kind of language, and that's how I understand things a lot. And one of the big things about that is attachment, right? So you can form attachment to things, and even if something's good, it can still be attachment, which can be a problem. And so you go, in my case, and I've only been doing this for like 2 or 3 months now, but you go from feeling like you don't have much control and agency, something really good comes into your life, and then what do you want to do? You want to invest more and more of your time into making it bigger, making it more successful, making it faster, and putting more weight and energy into it. And so my schedule is already pretty full on. Like I go 6:30 to 9:30, and I do it every day. And a couple times I haven't made it. That's fine. I haven't done it, but generally speaking, every morning for 3 hours just before work, and on the weekends. And so just recently, I was finding myself doing it in the afternoon as well. And then I was like, hold on a second, like, already doing it that much in the mornings is pretty full on already. And like, when does it cross the line of being a good thing that is an awesome schedule in your life to being something that you can get really attached to, which can end up compelling you to put more time into it than is good? Like, to me, doing it every morning is awesome because it keeps me on a schedule. It stops me from doing things like drinking when I shouldn't be drinking. It keeps me accountable to other people. But then if it's kind of like this double-edged sword, because you got this thing which is really cool and it makes you feel like you're empowered and you're doing something, but then pouring too much time into it at the cost of other things you could be doing in life can become like an attachment thing. It can become unhealthy. So I was just thinking recently, like, I want to do these art things. I do miniature painting. I want to do that as well as games. But is it really healthy for me to do more than once a day already? Like, is that crossing the line of it becoming something that has a bit too much gravity in my life compared to other things that I should also be doing,
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I think you're right. And not to mention it, whatever community you have, they don't have 24 hours to join you too, right? Like it's good for them to know that you know your schedule, right? That you're reliable at this time, and that they have a good 3 hours with you,
Mm-hmm.
and with other viewers in your community,
That's really interesting. I like the idea of trying to fight viewership FOMO by really controlling how much you stream, because that's like a boon to them as well. You know, you don't want to take up too much of your people's time, but
Mm.
you know, somebody you can get really attached to a streamer and you don't want to miss like something good that happens, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a kindness on the streamer's behalf to keep a regular tight schedule.
Mm.
Also to consider, Tim, like you were talking about, I mean, you don't want to sacrifice other things in your life, and you don't want to sacrifice your mental health,
Yeah.
because you're doing too much, because then the impact that you can have on people in your community is less, um, because you're spread too thin. So I think you might have it right, Tim. I
Mhm.
think I think you got it right.
Well,
I'm
it's also
furiously. Oh, sorry.
yeah. Go for it. No, you go for it, Jacob. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm furiously scribbling out my notes about how to improve this podcast. One of which being release 18 episodes a week.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying scribble down notes on your life. I thought you were
That too.
reevaluating your entire life.
It's completely unintentional, but I feel like every time we have a guest on the show, I take little nuggets from it about how we can improve our relationship with this show. Like
Mhm.
Timmy just mentioned the whole like not running it for yourself by, you know, overworking it. And we have been talking a lot recently about how to make, you know, grow the show, how to reach more people, things like that. And it can get to the point where it gets a little like taxing on the like excitement you feel
Yeah.
for the thing itself, you know, worrying about how to get the viewers and keeping people interested. But, you know, I think it's a better idea. And this is something that we've come to a conclusion on as well, is just to, you know, be consistent, you know, consistently put out episodes, consistently do our thing. And, you know, we'll bring in the people that are supposed to be here. So
Yeah. Well, it's diminishing returns as well, right? And the cost you're paying can be a lot of imbalance. That's what I was uh, driving at. You know, for me, this is something that is already ticking over and doing really well, and already a positive part of my life. And it's unhealthy to want to accelerate the process by doubling down. And, you know, and then it becomes that thing about the attachment where it's like you've taken something that has empowered you and put you on a step towards other things that you might do and has improved your life. And now, because you have that attachment to what it's giving you that you didn't have before, you want to invest more into it. But are you really doing that to improve the podcast, or are you really doing it because you now have something that you didn't have before that's giving you some purpose? And it's a really hard thing, but a really important thing to keep in mind. It's like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this now to create that little space, or am I doing it because it would really suck if I lost or didn't go all out on something that has finally given me the ability to feel like I have the control to do stuff in my life, you know?
yeah, that's interesting. It's acting from a place of fear versus a place of enjoyment, I
Yeah,
guess.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been battling that with the podcast recently. Like it's kind of like Jeff said. Every time we get somebody on, we get a little bit of a little nugget of something insightful, and like you were saying, we had spent like some extra time, and we did decide like we just need to cool off. What we're doing is working.
Mhm.
Uh, we should try new things every once in a while, but what we're doing is good. So we need to stay and maintain and just be us, right?
Yeah.
We need to not lose sight of the reason why we started it, which was just to hang out with people that we like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you can watch yourself when you make that decision, and you can just keep an eye on yourself emotionally and mentally and be like, when you put that boundary in for yourself, just notice what you feel. Like, because I noticed for me when I said, no, I'm just going to, keep this consistent. I don't have to double down. I shouldn't, because there are other things I should be doing in my life, which might be harder to engage with. And then, all of those things, and you say that to yourself, you might get a little tug, and a little emotional tug, or maybe even a sense of panic. having to limit something that could be really good. And again, I'd say that's all like an attachment thing. It's like it can quickly, when you have something good and new, it can come to represent more than it really is. And you have a tug and an urge to throw yourself into that. But it's like you said, what were you doing this originally for? To like talk with interesting people. And then it's not so much like a paranoid thing, but it's just very healthy to check in and watch yourself when you're thinking about what you should and shouldn't do. Because if you do keep a close eye on it when you're feeling those emotions, you can be like, oh shit, yeah, I'm actually doing this from a different place now. The desire to do it more coming from a very different place to when I started. And that can especially be true if you've got other things in your life, like other goals and other things that you want to do that are even harder. Like I've got plenty of other goals and things that are very difficult to engage with, very scary. And when you get one thing that's good, and I think the internet element is part of this, I've got one thing that I can do at home. And in the past, I've typically been a pretty avoidant dude. If I've got something that is easier to engage with on those kind of levels, and then it's good, there's even more of a pull to go all in on that. And then you're saying, am I doing this to do that little community? Or am I doing it because I've got that like sense of safety and that agency coming in, and I can pour myself into this, which might even be me avoiding other things that I should be doing that have nothing to do with this.
I really like what you said about, listening to your body and listening for that tug. I've been a fan of this idea of called human design for a while now. And my human design is I'm a manifesting generator, and my response mechanism, like how I'm supposed to like listen to my body and how I'm supposed to make good decisions based on my human design or whatever, is I'm supposed to listen to my gut and only respond to things once I have a clear understanding of what my gut's trying to say.
Yeah,
And I've been
dude.
trying to play around with that idea a lot lately. And so I've been doing some research into it. And like one thing I saw was just like infographic on it. And it was like, ways to tell when you're like ready to respond as a manifesting generator. And it's like, a no in your stomach feels like a tight contraction,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to be tight. It can be a slight contraction. Even that slight, squeeze is worth listening to, and
Yeah.
investigating within yourself. But, a good, a positive, a yes is this like big expansive feeling inside of you. And so I'm trying to, when approached with decisions, when I have a decision I have to make, I'm really trying to be better about sitting with my body and feeling that and trying not to respond as hard as that can be, because I'm usually someone who likes to respond immediately to things.
Yeah.
But taking the time to listen to my body and feel for that, I'm definitely feeling like more positive about the decisions I'm making, both the yeses and the nos. So I think that's really good.
I like that
Yeah.
you're listening to your gut decision, and that doesn't mean immediate reaction.
Right. Yeah. Because, I mean, your gut, sometimes it is immediate, sometimes you do get that tight squeeze. And like another one of the things in the infographic was like saying nope or I'm out of here, things like that. Like that happens to me pretty frequently where I'll hear something and my immediate reaction without even thinking about it is just to blurt out nope or no thanks or something like that, and I need to be cognizant of those as well, because that is a very immediate response. But it's those more gentle responses that, take the time to sit there and think about it. I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel quite right. Why is that? I need to explore that within myself.
Yeah, that's huge. That's the really important thing to do. It's funny. I've often thought about other people in my life I've known who are very assertive or who are very had that kind of immediate, super strong connection to their gut in a way that just seems so natural. I've known a few people like that, and it's been interesting thinking like viewing myself as a person who is not that, because that's traditionally been a thing that's been very difficult. And then realizing that you have the opportunity in anything that's important and any decision to make to take a moment to take a breath and then do exactly what you just said. And then the answer is always there. It might just be that you're the kind of person who needs to say, hold on a second, give me a second to tune into myself instead of being that snap decision person. But if you allow yourself to do that and you cultivate the ability to do that, and you can start with really small things. It's like, do I really want to drink right now? Like a tea or coffee or food or something? Or, is that my body saying that I want this? Or is it a pull related to something else? And like learning to cultivate that awareness and a bit more of a sophisticated way to sift that over time, you can become a person who is always available to access that. It might just be that you're a person who needs to take a few moments to reach that decision. But it's interesting thinking about people who seem to be really in tune with that and seem to be able to recruit it immediately, because I've never really felt like I've been that person. But
Yeah,
it's also
I feel
been really empowering realizing that all I need to do is tune in and that I can get better at that,
Right, yeah, because it is a muscle. Like, you have to work it out, like, you have to train yourself to do that. I think the people that are really good at those snap judgments I really do think that has to do with, like, conditioning while raising, they just had either the kind of parents or the kind of, eh, adults in their life that promoted that, sitting and thinking about, okay, is this really what you want to do? And, practicing that in
Yeah.
your life, it gets easier and easier.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's training, and like if you have a childhood thing, then you could be set up in a way from your family or your life that's like that. I remember talking with my brother about a guy he knew, who was a guy from the streets, and he was incredibly in tune with himself. Like immediately could make snap decisions, immediately go to action, immediately trust judgment and instinct, and it's like no wonder. Like you've grown up in an environment where that's how you live and succeed,
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, you can say like you can cultivate that as an adult consciously, or it's something that is given to you or put upon you in your earlier life, right? That development.
Yeah, I think there's two different things there, right? One, growing up, I see, you can see these like snap decision type people, and a lot of those types of people were the the leaders in a group at school, right? Like you're doing a group project and somebody wants to take over. Like they're confident,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're very confident in their abilities to begin with, right? And then there's people who I think were closer to like what we were talking about earlier, where you you really need to take some time or train yourself or um just be able to recognize over time that maybe you're not the smartest one in the room, but maybe you really do have input that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got me wanting to go back and practice my Zen Buddhism.
Right on.
because what I found when I was doing it, and the hardest thing about this type of process is like kind of letting the thoughts bounce off you, right? And only sticking to the thoughts that were important, right, to explore them in meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so powerful. I don't ever know why I stopped, but
Yeah.
I think I might have to hop back into that one, Tim. I think you convinced me.
Yeah, man. I can't. It seems to me that I can't live any other way.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I know that if I'd say that to my therapist, he would say, so you've got a form of attachment about it. And I'd be like, oh, you motherfucker. Just be like, you need it, don't you? I'd be like, oh, yeah, shit.
Let's
I need it.
examine that fear.
Yeah, right. Like in like judo move, like Buddhist judo move crap. That's always true. Yeah. Yeah, it is true. Yeah. I had a point just then, but I've forgotten what I was going to say.
I think it's also important to point out that listening to your gut isn't how everyone makes decisions either. Like there, and I'm going back to human design, but regardless of whether you believe in the astrology of it all, like it makes some really good points about how different people, respond to things. And Tim, I want to get your birth information later because I do want to see what your human design is. I think it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Like, what your
I'll type it to you on Discord.
Yeah, right on.
I don't care if somebody likes me enough already to reverse engineer my date of birth from a human engineering thing, then they've
That
earned
would
it.
be a feat. The math on human design is ridiculous. I know I've tried to build it in Chat GPT. It's too much work.
I want to talk a little bit more about your stream.
Hmm.
Um, so we've kind of talked about why you got into it and what you're doing it for. Is there a specific method into like the games you've chosen, or do you just play what you want to play and people hang around for it? Um, what's your kind of process around that?
No, there is actually. So it's tied to the kind of things I played as a way to like take refuge when I was younger, because I talked about being a really avoidant person. And as so many people can relate to, you play video games to get away from things. And
We've all been stuck in World of Warcraft for 3 years at least.
yeah,
So
right. And so I would play really challenging games, like super hardcore games like XCOM and Battle Brothers, which I know, Wiggy, you played, right?
yeah,
And things like that. And it was a obsessive interest with really hard things, playing it in the Iron Man mode where you don't reload if something goes wrong, and then doing the same sort of games over and over and over. Almost like OCD is the wrong thing. That's like commonly misattributed, right? But obsessive is a good word. To the point where I knew the game inside out and had, in some cases, thousands of hours and stuff. And going back to those things and then taking that knowledge and that uh, understanding of it on that, insane level. And then taking that from something that was a bit like shameful and a bit sort of signifying of a time in my life where I was avoiding things, and then using that knowledge to stream it to people in a way that's interesting and entertaining. Like, oh, we're going to play this mod on the hardest difficulty and I'm going to be able to talk about it at length. I'm playing XCOM. I know this map. I can talk about 20 different times a campaign failed, or I can point out a tile where something went wrong 5 years ago, that kind of thing. And then taking that and then kind of, in a way, transmuting that, that shame or that uh, attachment to that part of my life where it was difficult and it was kind of like a coping mechanism, and then turning that into something that's entertaining and gives a community to people and is tied into all of that good stuff, is actually a pretty deep thing for me. So it's been all of those things that I did when I was younger, which is like turn-based games, hardcore challenges, and I do want to do the art stuff, like the miniature painting as well, and talk about mental health and creativity, and maybe start interviewing people while I do it. But in terms of the games, it's been all of that stuff which I was doing as a way to cope when I was younger that I developed all of this expert knowledge in, and then turning that into something which entertains people and is part of that positive stuff instead.
yeah. So I think the thing that you're really hitting on is something that I've noticed a lot with media, right? So whether or not it's podcast or Twitch, or whether or not it's YouTube or whatever it may be, people gravitate towards authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
and everything that you're doing is focusing around yourself and your own needs
Mm-hmm.
and your own desires. And I think people feel that. Even over the internet, I think authenticity is the
Mm-hmm.
thing that people can really get a judge on. Um, and I think that's what the real key to success in doing anything like this is just being
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Um, and I think you're doing a great job at doing that. And I think that's why you've had that quick success. You're also engaging people in something that you're genuinely interested in. They can feel that.
Yeah.
And I think that's your key right there. So don't change doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. I think that's a really powerful thing to do. If you can take something that was attached to that negativity and then change it into something good, that's an amazing thing to do. And it's also symbolic because on a deeper level, when I was younger, I was more avoidant, more struggling. And then growing up into a young adult and a fully grown man, those difficulties and the lack of success in air quotes overcoming them quickly can build into a sense of shamefulness. And then going back and and you grow up as an adult, and there can be a tendency for us, especially people who have been into nerdy things, to push away and to say, I'm grown now. I'm not going to do that thing anymore. Or, you know, I'm not going to paint Warhammer models because I'm a grown up now. That was play. I'm a grown man now. I need to get the job and the family and this and that. And, there's an element of truth into growing into responsibility and maturity and stuff. But going back and embracing those parts of yourself that needed to do certain interests and things, or needed play, play through playing a video game, or play through painting and playing a tabletop game, and saying that that is still a part of you, and then embracing that part of you, and then sharing that with other people is a super important thing to do. And it's not lost on me that that's what I'm doing. And it's not lost on me that I'm starting to feel a sense of that success and that agency by, in a way, going back to the kid that didn't get validation and approval and was nerdy and playing video games and doing that kind of creativity and art. And then saying, no, that's still me. And I'm doing it today, and I'm owning it, and I'm showing it in my own way, and I'm sharing it with people, and it's working. Like, it's not lost on me that is a process of embracing yourself in a way that was pushed away before, and doing it in an authentic way, like you just talked about, right?
I love it when my friends get together and talk about alchemy and healing their inner child. Like,
Mhm.
this is such good stuff here. Like, transmuting those negative past experiences
Yeah,
into like positive energy and then disseminating that out to other people. Good stuff.
yeah, man. That's how it goes, right? You heal where you've hurt in the past, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that. I feel that now. When you were talking about not like, feeling shame for doing one thing or another, or
Mm.
practicing avoidance by doing those things. I mean, that's the story of my life, right? Like,
Mm.
avoidance is the one thing that I am uh,
Yep.
addicted to,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
and in the past, but I also found the one thing that I love to do, whether or not it was gaming, or whether or not it was role playing on tabletop, or um anything really. It was just, I really liked just hanging out with people I really like to hang out with,
Mm.
and talking about whatever, and that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, being able to find that thing, and you know, uh, I have this thing where when I was a kid, I feel like or when I was younger, I was really fun. And then I grew up, kind of like you're saying, I got married, I got a kid,
Mm-hmm.
I got the job, I'm taking care of the bills, but I felt inside of myself that I stopped being fun.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but when I'm hanging out with you guys, I feel plenty fun.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a fun person. So Tim, I don't know why you came on to be my therapist today, but I'm glad you did.
I'm gonna charge the shit out of you, dude. That's all right.
All right. What's the fee? What's that look like?
You got a bleep thing?
Sure, I'll believe it.
Yeah, because I want to squeeze the next person,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's funny because I mentioned the word play because, again, I've talked about that with my therapist, like the importance of it. And again, that's a fine line thing because, especially for avoidant people, you can go into the Peter Pan kind of archetype, right? You can use play as a way to avoid other things and other responsibilities. And we all know people, or have been ourselves, people who have resided in that play too much, in an unhealthy way. I know in Warhammer, loads of people who would do that in a way where the amount of time and energy they put into that hobby would be holding them back from other things like other adult responsibilities. There is a point where it becomes maladaptive, but it's also really important to not let yourself lose that as part of your life as an adult, because life is fucking miserable without an element of play in it and an element of creativity. And so I think it's probably a really common path through life for adults where they have that kind of symbolic pushing away of that as they assume adult responsibilities, and then they realize the importance of a healthy amount of it and they return to it, right?
You know, we were actually talking about something very similar on the last episode that we just did, with John Kennedy, who works in the tabletop gaming industry. Um, it, Games being used as therapy, and games being used, um, even as a way for people to get a little bit of escape for mental health, even if they're on death row. There are death row inmates playing Dungeons and Dragons to relieve stress, essentially, and build a sense of community with other people who are on death row. Um,
And also get a
and
chance to be somebody else. That's
yeah,
what we brought
and
up a lot in the episode.
One shots only, huh? So
Oh.
that was a bad shot.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Good job. That's the kind of wild we'd like to see here.
There's a little gremlin in there still.
Okay, so I did look up your human design. I just
Oh,
want to throw
nice.
things at you
Yeah.
real quick. Okay, so your type is a projector. Okay.
Cool.
So projectors in this world are here to solve problems and show others how to use their energy more efficiently.
Yep.
Okay. And your strategy, and my strategy was the listen to the gut thing. Your strategy is an emotional authority, which means your like wise way of responding to things is to not listen to your gut, but see what feelings are being brought up within you
Mm-hmm.
and like process those instead. So very similar idea, but a little different. The cool thing I think about a projector is their strategy. Sorry, their strategy is wait for the invitation. And their inner authority is the solar plexus, the feeling thing. Sorry. So the strategy is wait for the invitation, and that means that instead of trying to proactively solve problems, your best strategy is to wait until someone approaches you with a problem, and then you'll have like within you the solution to their issue, or something to provide. So
That's
I don't.
interesting. It's interesting you say the solar plexus, because I know maybe it's sort of tangential or a different thing, but anxiety always radiates out of the solar plexus for me. I always get flashes of feeling from there.
So Tim, prior to streaming, and actually maybe still, I'm not exactly sure what you do. You write for a living, right?
Yeah. I was a freelance copywriter before COVID, and then that fell apart and I lost all of my income, and then I went into permanent. So I work for a corporation in financial services doing copywriting and like a big budget app development stuff.
Right on. So what are your feelings? This is something we talk about on like every episode, but what are your feelings on AI? Like, how is it affecting your world right now?
We're starting to see like pretty high up people crowdsource and ask for initiatives and start to implement them. I don't know. Like I'm very reluctant to ever make calls on things I don't feel really informed about, and the amount of sensationalizing and AI Terminator, kind of tier talk that I'm sure has been talked about at length between you guys. If you talk about this all the time, makes it hard to sift out and have any certainty on stuff. There seems to be loads of cool low hanging fruit. I think it's generally sensationalized in a negative way, but if it can do loads of efficiency, then there's loads of cool socially positive things that it could help with as well, especially when we have like an increasing amount of income inequality and social inequality, but at the same time all of this goddamn internet. then that speaks to loads of opportunities that it could have there. But I think that those don't get talked about as much as AI taking over the world, right?
Right. Yeah. Have you used any ChatGPT or anything like that?
Yeah, I have used it. It's pretty alarming. It's certainly a good time as a copywriter for me to get into a corporate position, which is developing other skill sets and stuff, because the kind of writing I did when I kicked off was like SEO article writing, and that's gone. I mean, it's
Right.
you can still do it, but you can click a button and in a second get something that I would charge X amount of money for and take X amount of time to do. And
Right.
people are too busy to validate that. And like, it probably makes it harder for people just getting started who don't have anything else to offer. So, it's decimating industries, right? And that is definitely one of them.
Well, it sounds probably way harder to do it successfully with it being flooded, Google being flooded with results.
It's interesting that one of the first things that AI kind of achieved. My brother, I talk about this a lot, and he works in enterprise data architecture, so it's super related to his work, and he's very up to date on it to a degree that I'm not. But he raised a good point. It's very interesting that one of the first things that AI achieved was art. Like, you wouldn't think that, really, right? I'm talking about like the recent AI sort of outbreak and big shift. Like, one of the first things that came out was the ability of AI to make creative stuff like artwork. It was very interesting to me that was one of the first things that emerged compared to other things that you would assume might be a bit more like quantifiable and easy. The first thing that they achieved was this like really creative thing.
Yeah, it's really strange. Like, you would definitely think that it would be like, I don't know, I would say like computational or written would be like the first thing that would really pop up. But yeah, when DALL-E came out and then Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, like, it's interesting that computers are so capable of processing like creative data and then outputting, I don't know, like the whole like process of that is insane to me, especially with, like you said, like I would have expected ChatGPT to come out way before DALL-E ever came out.
One of the things that I think is really interesting from a moral and ethical perspective is the growing, well, if not immediate potential now of AI to provide relationship replacement kind of stuff. Like,
I'm talking about that at length.
were you? Yeah. Well, it's like, is it ethically problematic if someone voluntarily purchases the use of an AI that not only like mimics a relationship, but can be computed to have an awareness of their mental or physical health challenges, their need for support in X, Y, and Z in a way that could actually help them? It's like, if you make that transactional to that degree, are we going to end up with AI relationship services that can say, I'm at this place in my life, I don't have this? Could you be at a point where you could say, I'm isolated, I have this mental health condition, I need this helps me. I've got, even a sheet of stuff from a GP, in the UK, like a doctor saying, this would help me out. Can you create me a community of AIs that are aware of my mental health issues? One of them is a partner, and they all communally interact with me and support me. Like, what the hell would that look like? And would it be a bad thing?
It's really crazy to think about.
Yeah,
Like,
it is
because
really
we think about it on a one-on-one, but like, what if I'm like, oh, I'm isolated, I want to buy a community, I want to buy a Discord server of 20 people, all of them know about me, all of them support me, check in on me, I get messages all the time asking how I am, asking how my mental health is, X, Y, and Z, did I take the meds? You could buy a community instead of just one person.
Oh man, that's so dangerous though too.
Yeah.
Flip side of that is, creating a community for you to get lost in.
Oh, for
Right.
sure. Yeah, I'm being a bit of devil's advocate. It's like fucking terrifying idea. But,
Yeah.
it's a thing we think about AI as a single entity. We don't really general discourse think about the purchasing of a collective, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you were to purchase something like that, assuming it's not a one-time payment, it's probably a service, and they're probably ultimately going to build into the AI's programming that
Oh God.
it's incentivized to keep you there.
Oh, dude, I'm on dating apps and it's so horrible. And you just gave me like the whole Bumble like pop up. Do you want a super swipe? You can buy 2 for £5. And you just gave me like the Discord plug-in AI future of like, do you want a mental health check-in? You can get one message from the AI for £5. Like a dating app, but it's like AI community, and you're paying for that interaction. Oh, that's scary.
Oh, this is really scary to think about for sure, because this week has been the big week of autonomous agents in artificial intelligence. Like the beginning of these highly specialized AIs that are essentially like the community you were just talking about for, a program or a business,
Mhm.
and how you'll have multiple of these and they'll be able to communicate with each other and make decisions with each other. And like, this is the beginning of what you were just saying. Like, I think about it like, yeah, this is like step one leading to like all of us living in the movie Her.
No, I haven't seen that.
You have to think about it from this other point of view too. So before that it hits consumer, it's going to hit business, which means there goes the replacement of every single company's sales department. There goes the replacement of every business's HR department. There goes the replacement of marketing.
That's
All
so
of these
interesting that you
things.
think those three in particular, though, because those are the ones that I feel like are really human centric. Like sales and working with people, and
Yeah,
HR,
but if
underwriting.
there's groups of them working together in concert, you can achieve almost the exact same outcome.
Oh, it's
Mhm.
Like, I
just
think
one
that's
person becomes a curator of things, right?
right.
Right.
You have a director who has a fleet of essentially an AI community doing the work for them, and then you can have somebody like oversee,
Oh my
right?
god.
And like
Just imagining, like, instead of having to deal with telemarketers, having to deal with like a hive mind telemarketer, one director
exactly.
of
Well,
vision harnessing the power of thousands of tiny little AIs.
I was actually having this chat with someone on my stream not too long ago, and we were talking about the shifting away of community. I think I started talking about the lack of community, like you don't have a local community, a physical community, and then that community has like coaches and resources, and it takes a village to raise a child. We were talking about that kind of thing. And then we went to talking about how we've substituted community for the internet. And so we have Twitter and everything connecting us, but it's not a community. And that, you know, collectively gives you a feeling of like an absence, and like an aching and absence, that I think people are starting to get more tuned into now. They're like, something is fundamentally super wrong, and there's a hole in me. Like, I don't have an actual community. I have the internet, and it's not the same thing. And then we're at this place now where we've already made a shit deal. We've, traded physical, villages and communities for the internet, and it's got all of these negative repercussions. It's turning people against each other. There's like blind tribalism and combativeness. And now we're at the point where AI is coming in. So the thing that we've lost and replaced with, which is the internet, is increasingly becoming a thing we can't even trust anymore on a very fundamental level. It's like we've made this terrible trade, and the thing that we've traded it for is something that we now just fundamentally don't know is real anymore, because AI is going to continue to influence AI video, AI chatbots, and stuff. And it's like the thing that we paid such a high price for, the internet is increasingly becoming something that you will have no faith in or ability to like reliably use anymore.
Well, can I throw some like light on this bit of darkness here? What if it ends up being that we create all these little autonomous agents, all these little AIs, and they all work in harmony with the voice assistant we carry with us? Maybe the bright side here is we won't need to spend as much time on the internet, because finding what we want would be as simple as, saying, "Hey Siri, what's blah blah blah," or it'll be so built into our living life, our away from the computer life, that we won't feel the need to be on the computer. And maybe that'll lead to more community, like physical community, as a result. There's the dystopia view that we're all going to end up wearing Oculus Rifts, laying in our beds and not moving. But there's also the possibility that we just make all of this wearable, and we end up being together physically more, because we're not so attached to the internet and all that it has to offer, and the FOMO we feel of not sitting at our computers taking things in.
So instead of an army of Discord bots that pay attention to you, it's a AI girlfriend in an android body who drags you outside.
I think it's not really a flip side, but an aside to this is, as humans, we love creation. And with the internet, we've essentially created a secondary world. And the bleeding is the problem. Not so much that there is a second world, but that there's this joining of the two in a way that is intrusive. And I think, to a degree, lots of people are finding that push and feel to do some things that aren't digital.
Yeah.
But some people are going all in. And going all in on something like that is the real concern. That's when we wind up with the whole sitting in chairs with goggles, never moving kind of that Ready Player One this type situation. And I don't think there's a way that somebody pushes the button and makes the difference. I think we just have to. This is a wait and see type situation, and which is going to pull more heavy. I think just about everybody hopes that the real world kind of pulls heavier than the digital, but the digital is so addictive that people having to fight their addictive tendencies to stay away is going to be something that's really difficult. No matter what generation you come from, it seems like there's an inevitability to it that is only combated by this old cultural idea of, yeah, we should definitely go out to the cabin this weekend, and sit by a fire and fish, right? Like there's this it's going to be interesting to see which wins.
The thing that comes to mind for me is that we've created a setup that you can, go down a lot of rabbit holes and talk about as having a lot of various types of social issues and inequality, and those have become wider and more exaggerated in a lot of different ways in a lot of different countries now. And I think my prediction is that it's going to get to the point where, as AI capabilities become more powerful and people discover all of the different use cases for it, that we have created we live in a society meme. We've created a setup where we have so much disparity and so many different kinds of low-hanging fruit that people are going to naturally turn to AI to solve all of these problems because of how much of a cost saver it can be. And I think that's going to make it spread a lot faster and a lot more ubiquitous.
Well, Tim, this has been so much fun, man. Thank you so much for coming on here today.
Yeah, thank you.
Where can people find you?
Tim the Sorcerer, Twitch. The last E is a 3. That seems to be the best way to describe it.
Right on. And you do have a Discord, correct?
Yes, we do indeed. It's just Twitch at the moment, so I don't have social channels to shout out. But
Right
you can find me on that platform.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of the Panda Pod. We'll be back next week.
Peace.
Bye.
Later, everybody.